When you have been through narcissistic relationships, conflict, differences can feel catastrophic. The implicit message when you've been through these relationships is that if there's a fight or an argument, then all hell will break loose. And you also learn that if you stand your ground in a conflict and you expect reciprocal accountability, then you will either A, face even more rage, B, be gaslighted and told that you are demanding, C, face the silent treatment or withdrawal, or D, all of the above. And sadly, D is usually the right answer. Tension is a constant presence in a narcissistic relationship. There is that sense that the narcissistic person can blow or get up and leave at any time. Their hypersensitivity, the suspiciousness, the provocability, the constant monitoring of threat. It always feels, like I said, these relationships and the narcissistic person can blow. This is the origin of the walking on eggshells hypervigilance dynamic of every narcissistic relationship. In essence, we hold our breath for the period of most of these relationships and wonder why our bodies are falling apart. Every child that grows up with a narcissistic parent endures this, wanting to avoid pissing off or setting off the parent. And the message when you grow up in a narcissistic household is that conflict is to be avoided at all costs. And this is no different in an adult narcissistic relationship, where conflict is always wound up, coiled up, ready and waiting to happen. In fact, the collapse and the deflation of survivors in these relationships can often mean that the conflict slows down because you are either too exhausted or too demoralized to take on the fight. Listen, not all conflict is bad conflict. Conflict is an integral part of human relationships. We are not always going to agree. In a healthy relationship with two healthy or even two healthy adjacent people, there may be some heated words, but then there can be accountability, meaningful apologies, a willingness to reflect on what unfolded, and then a commitment to getting it right, to tightening up communication. It's not punitive and silent treatment-y and grudge holding for a long time. All of us have attachment wounds. And if you don't have any, you probably aren't watching this channel. And in conflict, those wounds can get activated. The anxiously attached folks out there, you can get quite triggered and fearful during conflict, afraid of abandonment, and may hold on tight and really want to get to resolution quicker than the other person. All of us avoidant folks, you may have a bit of the F you approach and hole up for a minute and go a little silent. But, and this is the but, you can snap out of it. And after the initial nervous system responses pass, can have a repairing conversation and process because you value the relationship. You can be accountable and even be vulnerable. Our attachment wounds don't damn us in conflict. Narcissism, however, does. For a narcissistic person, there are not two sides. There is their side, and then there is the wrong side. That's you. The combination, not just of the attachment stuff, but then the self-righteous indignation, the grandiose and self-protective defenses, the lack of self-awareness, the how dare you exert yourself as a separate human being, the entitlement, the incapacity to have empathy for another point of view that they don't agree with, means that conflict is not only deeply unhealthy, but that there is often no clear way of repairing and restoring after the conflicts. Listen, narcissistic people can issue pseudo apologies. Remember the good old, I am sorry you feel that way. And they can even pretend to extend olive branches, which you have to accept on their schedule. If they're handing you the olive branch, you have no choice. You got to take it, or you're the one who's holding a grudge. Narcissistic people can also throw a rageful, explosive tantrum during an argument or say relatively unforgivable things about you, and the next day almost act like it didn't happen, or that you are making a big deal by bringing it up and you're the one with the problem because you can't let it go. So the repairs aren't really repairs. They are the equivalent of putting duct tape on a broken window. The window is still broken. This lack of repair is why the narcissistic relationship gets less and less healthy over time. Again, there can be fake repair, ignoring what happened, you taking the blame, them giving you a BS apology, you never bringing anything up, ignoring the ongoing, ever-growing elephant in the room. But that isn't really repair. That's just pretending that everything is fine. So over time, the relationship feels less and less safe, more and more hollow, less and less real, and you feel more and more disconnected. It dies a slow death because it cannot be repaired. You can't just duct tape everything. Over time, it will fall apart. Being in narcissistic relationships can give us a distorted sense of what conflict and repair mean. Conflict can feel like an irreparable end. It can feel like terror. It can feel like an overwhelming sense of, what did I do wrong? Old attachment wounds can get pinged on the daily in a narcissistic relationship because of that fear of conflict. And sadly, it can bleed into other relationships, including those that can be repaired. Not all relationships are unrepairable. In fact, conflict can be the point at which a relationship blossoms and grows and expands and levels up. It's where trust can build, not just in the other person, but in ourselves. But the fear of conflict that grows out of narcissistic relationships means that if you are a survivor, you may feel that you aren't good at conflict. The greatest risk for folks who are survivors of narcissistic relationships, especially childhood relationships, is the tendency to quickly take the blame to keep the relationship going. Narcissistic relationships program us to do that. By taking the blame, we can go back to the trauma-bonded structure, and the narcissistic person is willing to have us take the blame. So our go-to in conflict is to take the blame, to accept their inane apology, if there even is one, to avoid any topics that could bring conflict up, to never ask for accountability, to never even think accountability is possible, and to shrink ourselves to make it work. As a survivor of one of these relationships, conflict can be very unsettling, but we have to learn how to do it, or as people call it now, having difficult conversations. In many ways, having these so-called difficult conversations or conflict is the equivalent of going into the proverbial tiger's cage. You can learn a lot about how a person is built by watching how they take on conflict. Are you ultimately able to get to a place that is balanced and you feel heard? And in some conflicts, it may not come to a perfect ending. But frankly, if you feel safe, connected, heard, and seen after a conflict, that's a big part of repair. What is not repair is you forever taking the blame, the other person forever holding a grudge, the ongoing rhetoric that you are somehow the difficult one for wanting to work through conflicts. Narcissistic people would rather just fight the fight or give you the silent treatment in the way they want. But they don't want, nor do I think are they able, to have a balanced, difficult conversation. They just want to throw a tantrum, have you feel bad, and then behave as though you are the problem. Listen, none of us are perfect during an argument. Our human tendency is to defend ourselves or to shut down. And this can be even more significant if we have histories of relational trauma, narcissistic family systems, or other forms of abuse. But if we are not antagonistic or narcissistic, we can do the vulnerable work of accountability and level up our relationships. It may take a minute, but in our relationships, if we let it breathe and watch how it unfolds, that gives us the data we need to know what this relationship is really about. Relational ruptures can be repaired. Say that a few times fast. Maybe not in narcissistic or antagonistic relationships, but in many others. And when you see the difference, you get it. Repair is possible. And when you recognize that that's actually oftentimes a tilt point between antagonistic relationships and healthy relationships, it'll give you faith in what can happen when conflict is repaired and the relationship can move forward in a more trusting direction. Thanks again.